kick it off to Howard Kingston, who is our guest speaker, a founder, growth hacking expert here from London by way of Ireland. And if everyone can give a warm round of applause for Howard, we'll dive into it.
Yep, cool. Amazing to be here. Before we get started, can everyone just please do me a favor and please, everyone stand up. Cool. And if you could just do the following. First of all, just raise your hands. I'd like you to put them on the shoulders of the people beside you. And cool. And when I count to three, when I count to three, I'm going to ask you to do two things. One, I'm going to ask you to start shaking your partner by the shoulders. And two, I want you to say really loudly, "Holy crap, he's interactive." All right? Got it? 1, 2, 3. Holy crap, he's interactive. Cool. Thank you. And you can have a seat. Cool. So I always like to start the way I will continue, because I really believe I've got 30 minutes with you guys here today, and I really believe there's two ways that we could spend the next 30 minutes together. How many ways are there? Two ways. The first way could be me talking at you for 30 minutes, or the second way is we get super interactive. I'm going to share some examples of stuff that's worked for me in the past and how you guys can use it. So you leave here with a bit of a plan, as well as hopefully some inspiration to do some really cool stuff. Is that cool? Yeah, sweet. So how do you grow a startup to millions of customers or millions of revenue, right? How do you do that? So I'm going to share some stuff how I've done that in the past, both with a B2C business, growing to millions of users, not really using much marketing, spending much money on marketing, by the way, and also on the B2B side, growing businesses to millions in revenue. And I've also kind of sat where you are, by the way. I've been through numbers of accelerators, and I've also raised millions from venture capitalists. So I kind of know what you're going through, right? I'm also super excited for it, because it's such an exciting time. But I'm here talking about this thing called growth hacking, right? Hands up, who would say growth hacking is something you've kind of heard a little bit about, you're not quite sure what it is, or maybe you've never heard of it before? Just show of hands. It's kind of like a newish concept. Okay, so it looks like about half of the people kind of heard of it, but probably would like to know more about it. And then half the people is completely new. So I'm going to, in the next 30 minutes, I really want to bring you through what it is, why it's important, but also some really practical things you guys can use to use it and hopefully go and replicate that yourself. Because I've used this, it's a subject I'm really passionate about, because I have used this myself to launch a business. Within 18 months, we hit 20 million users globally. We didn't spend very much on advertising. So the question is, how do you do that? And let's be honest, most of the businesses that are changing the world at the moment, Airbnb, Uber, all these kind of guys, they didn't do it because they got really good at how to put ads in a magazine or how to get good at TV ads. They didn't do any of that stuff. They marketed it in a new way. And marketing is changing, and that's what I want to talk about today, right? But I think it's really important because, first of all, why is this important? I find, particularly when you're a startup, if you don't have a growth plan, right? So there's like marketing, and now there's a whole new thing called growth marketing. Did you know there's like even a job title, head of growth now? Some of you know that. Some of you don't. It's a new job title, growth marketer. And they're very well paid because they're very powerful. They can influence the results of a business really, really strongly. Here's the problem if you don't have a good, well thought out growth plan. First of all, when it comes to growth, when you hear about these businesses like Airbnb scaling really rapidly, it's because they've come up with all these kind of innovative, kind of creative marketing ideas, right? So, that was really clever. If you don't know how to do this stuff, you kind of run out of ideas. You maybe read one article and you try it and it doesn't work, and then you run out of ideas. The second thing is, you might try one thing and you get a little bit of a spike in customers. I'm sure some of you have experienced that. You've done one thing and a bit of a spike, but it's not sustainable, right? So you kind of do a little bit and it comes back down again. What we need to do is kind of get a growth plan that's sustainable over time, right? And then ultimately, any of the investors that you're speaking to today, one of the biggest things they look for is momentum, right? They want to see growth over a period of time. And without a growth plan, you don't have that momentum, and that makes it really hard when you're speaking to investors, particularly when you're raising that seed round or Series A round, right? But here's the opportunity if we can figure this stuff out. One, we can come up with ideas that consistently bring in a flood of customers. It can increase our velocity. We can start going really, really fast. So I remember, I'll share the story in a few minutes of one of the businesses that we launched. At one point, we were growing by 80,000 users a day. And that's a really cool, we had problems because we, keeping up with servers and stuff. We couldn't buy enough servers at the time. But that's a kind of nice problem to have, I guess, isn't it? And it means you can build for the long term, right? A sustainable plan that you can grow for the long term without having to spend a lot on marketing budget, right? Cool. So one of the businesses that I've been kind of referring to is the gaming business, right? So we launched it a couple of years ago, and just to show you the trajectory, hopefully everyone can see this because I'm going to kind of write quite a bit. Essentially, it was a football game that you could play on mobile or online. It's called I Am Player. Anyone ever play it? Lots of people did, but I don't know if anyone. If it was, we had a lot of customers in Norway actually, and so we launched it. Essentially, you were a footballer. You trained and you could score goals, and we launched it. Oh, slight change. We actually launched it here, and I would say we grew to 50,000 users through we got our first 50,000 users through paid, a little bit of Facebook ads and a little bit of public relations, right? Two things that might be on your plan already. And we grew like this, and then we started dipping off. Got a little bit if these are months, after about 4 months or so, we started dipping off in growth. And then we discovered something here that allowed us to go from 50,000 users up to 350,000 users in 30 days. And we didn't spend any money on it, right? And then we went on, kept on growing. Eventually, 18 months, we hit the 20 million mark. I'd love to tell you today a little bit about what we did here, because it's something that I believe everyone in the room can replicate. Because the thing that excites me about this growth hacking stuff is it is a repeatable process, and I really like repeatable processes. Hands up who likes repeatable processes they can do themselves, right? I really like them too, right? So quick check-in. I'd just love you to turn to your partner, introduce yourself, and just quick share. What excites you about learning about this stuff today? What is it about growth hacking for your business, or if you're an investor for maybe your portfolio? What is it about this growth hacking thing that you think is exciting? Really quick share, 1 minute, and I'll ask a few people to share it. Okay, cool, go. Cool, and stop. Cool, just love really quick one or two shares. Maybe you guys over there. What is it that excites you?
Being able to have a higher return on investment on your marketing budget.
Totally, totally. Instead of just like throwing money into a hole, which I think a lot of investment money can do sometimes, really knowing what your return on investment is, yeah, and improving it. Love that. And someone else, maybe, do you want to? Yeah, either or. You were just hugging it out. Maybe just behind you.
Yeah, I mean, like, you just raised my expectations level, like, very high, so I'm getting a little bit skeptical. I just like
Dude, bring it.
it's just like some bull crap.
It's all good, dude. It's all good. Bring it. You know what? So here we have 30 minutes today. I'll have achieved my goal meeting you guys here today if I can just open your minds to what's possible. Right? That's my goal for today. Clearly in 30 minutes, I'm not going to be able to teach you every single growth strategy out there. It's impossible. But if I can open your mind into what is possible, because it is possible. And you better believe it, because businesses in Silicon Valley are doing it. And if you want to compete with them, you got to be able to open your eyes to this stuff, all right? Question? Yeah. Yeah, do a quick share. Yeah, go. Yeah.
Most that to get your users to actually promote your products and teach other users for you.
Yeah.
Do the whole
Kind of viral stuff? Yeah. Would you like me to talk a little bit about that? Yeah, let's do that, will we? Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm excited. Hope you're as excited as me. Cool, so why are we talking about this today? So I want to introduce you to this dude. His name is Sean Ellis. What's his name? Sean Ellis, yeah. So he was VP of marketing at a company called Dropbox. You probably heard of it. A couple of years ago. And he was looking around him about the businesses that were doing really well, the kind of the breakout businesses of the day, the kind of the Airbnbs, the Hotmails, all these kind of things. And he was trying to deconstruct how they were doing that, right? And by the way, I'm going to use deconstruct and replicate a few times today, and you should learn from that. So he was kind of looking, what were they doing? And he was looking at their growth strategies. How were they getting customers? And he found that what they were doing, they weren't doing radio ads. They weren't even good at Facebook ads weren't really a thing back then, but like Google ads or display ads. They weren't doing these things. They had learned some way to use the product itself, the way that people interacted with their product to get more customers, right? And there wasn't a name for that at the time. So this dude introduced coined the term growth hacking, right? So that's kind of the brief background about it. And it's kind of, there's a few definitions of it. This guy, Aaron Ginn, says it's the mindset of data, creativity, and curiosity, right? And I like that because you'll see in a few minutes why all these things are important. But it's super new, right? So if we're looking at, this is Google Trends data, really before 2000, it was really only about 2013 that really this became popular, right? It just wasn't around before. It just didn't exist. And I think what is exciting about that is that's exciting for you guys. Because I like anything new, it means most people don't know about it. Most corporates don't know about it. Most media agencies that are spending all the money don't know about it, so you guys can take advantage of something that they don't know too much about, right? But it's a really new thing. It's kind of growing and growing and growing till to this point now in kind of Silicon Valley, London, etc. You have heads of growth and kind of people who do this for a living. So what has changed in marketing since this dude? Yeah. So what's one of the biggest ways marketing has changed since Don Draper's day, other than the fact that people don't drink as much at lunchtime?
the mediums they use.
Such as? Channels? So you mean like marketing channels? Yeah, there used to be like a couple of channels. Now there's how many channels you can't count, right? Yeah, totally. What else? Someone else at the internet, cool. But what does that empower a marketer to do? How has marketing changed? Reach? Yeah, totally. So there's more channels. You can instantly and click. We could do a global marketing campaign in 3 clicks, couldn't we? Yeah. More personal? Yeah, it's more about kind of knowing exactly the user as opposed to it used to be more like shouting from the top of a mountain, doing a billboard in Times Square. Now it's not so much like that. One more? Yeah, so there's this thing like some people say that this was Mad Men, now it's about math men, right? Because it's very data driven. And what does that allow you to do? But what does analytics, that's a thing, what does it allow you to do? Yeah, and you can optimize and change, and if something's not working, you can change it, right? So all this kind of stuff. But one thing that really is different as well, in Don Draper's day, a marketer used to just be a person that, say, a creative. And, you know, anyone who went to university to study marketing, anyone here? Like I did too. Like the stuff I learned was communications, branding, bit of user kind of behavior kind of stuff, and that's kind of it. Whereas a marketer of today, a good growth marketer will also be involved in how the product is built. Don Draper wasn't involved in how the product was built, was he? Why? Because if you want to have a product that grows by itself using viral marketing, the marketer has to be involved in the product development of the product. I'm going to use some examples for that in a second. So how I see growth. So this growth hacking thing is really kind of 3 things. So you need to be good at creative ideas, growth hacking, creative ideas. The second being you need to get good at automation, installing automation into any of the ideas that you brought in, and coding. And the last one is data and experiments. Right? Very data-driven, very, very data-driven. You know, we need, and we'll see this in a minute as we go through the growth process, right? So these are the kind of the key things, skills that we need to learn to become a growth marketer. So I want to share just 1 or 2 hot principles if you're kind of getting started with this stuff. So I said earlier it's a process that can be learned. So this is what the process looks like. So, and it's a very scientific approach to marketing. So the first thing you'll do is you'll create a backlog. So the creative bit is bringing in your team together and coming up with a load of growth ideas. I'll give you 1 or 2 examples in a sec. Then we will create a hypothesis of how to put, a hypothesis really means like a scientific experiment to try it. Come up with some ideas. Next thing we'll do is figure out how are we going to test this. Then we'll run the experiment. And the final step is we'll review the data. Okay? And it will run around in a loop like this, right? Okay? So let's see let's just say, for example, you and your team said, listen, let's see if we can do some viral marketing in our business, right? So you would come up with a number of ideas, and we're going to brainstorm a way to come up with viral market ideas in just a second. You'll add them to a backlog, and then 1 at a time you'll test them, and you'll run them through this cycle, right? So this is like the growth engine running around, all right? So let's step through it together, and hopefully by the end of it you'll have a good sense of how it works. So let's start with a backlog of ideas. So remember I said I like to deconstruct things, and deconstructing what works for other people is cool. So I remember a couple of years ago, I was sitting in an office in London running marketing for this gaming business, which I introduced earlier, which we had just launched. Now, I'm a big believer in something called R&D. What does R&D stand for? Nope. Not in our world. We'll call it rob and duplicate. All right? Rob and duplicate. Copy with pride, whatever. There's a few things. I like, yeah, rob and duplicate. I love that. So I looked at Dropbox, who at this point were scaling quite fast, and we deconstructed what were they doing to get customers. Does anyone know the viral loop that Dropbox created, which was quite famous?
Yeah, they just give free space to share articles. So the new user.
Yeah, totally. So essentially, when someone, those of you that aren't aware, Dropbox Cloud Storage, when someone ran out of energy, or ran out of, I should say, storage space, it said, if you'd like to get more storage space, invite a friend. You can either pay, or if you invite a friend, we'll give it to you for free, essentially. So we kind of looked at that, and so how could we replicate that into our soccer game, right? And the way that the soccer game worked was you were playing on your mobile or online, and essentially you would train your player for a little bit, build up their skills, and then then you play a game, a soccer game, right? And you score a goal in the match. And that was like the addictive, what you might call the aha moment that people got really addicted to doing. And after they scored the goals, they had two choices. Either one, they had to wait 24 hours of real time to play again, or they had to buy a virtual item, a virtual energy drink in this case. We got Red Bull to sponsor it, so it was a virtual can of Red Bull, right? And people don't like to wait, do they, for things? People don't like to pay money for things, do they? No. So a virtual can of Red Bull was $1, just for context, is $1 US. No, we sold a virtual can of Red Bull, which didn't exist, and that when someone bought that, they drank it and they powered up again. No one got a physical Red Bull ever.
But you guys made money for both sides, basically.
Correct, yeah. So they sponsored. We got Nike and Red Bull to sponsor us in advance. That's how we funded the build of the game, right? And so a virtual can of Red Bull was $1. What do you think was the most expensive thing we ever sold in that game? Virtual. What do you think? How much was it? Yeah, so we did sell virtual Nike boots. At one point, we were the largest seller of Nike boots in the world. None of them existed, of course, but it was still a great PR story, right? Good a guess. Anyone else? Players? We didn't sell players, actually. It was a good idea. Like to have a guess? Football stadium. Yeah, we sell football stadiums, I think. Yeah. How much do you think that was? Of real money. 30, 40 quid. Good guess. So the most expensive thing we ever sold was a virtual yacht. Because every player needs a yacht, right? True story. How much do you think the yacht cost? $1,500. And did people buy them? Yes. For real money. $1,500. Moral of the story, never assume how much money people have to spend who are on your website, because there's always a few outliers who have maybe more money than sense, right? And are not that kind of, price sensitive. So there could have been, like, say, some sheik somewhere playing our game and they spent money on it. So it makes you think. And I actually shared that in London to a group recently, and there was someone who was running an event plan and put on like a triple the price deal the week after doing this, and started selling them, and people started buying them. So for all you guys, just think about that. What is like maybe something you could have in your product for people who don't mind spending money so much? Anyway, slight detract. Back to the point. The game loop was that you could either spend $1 or you could wait 24 hours. And of course, people don't like doing either of those things, do they? So we reverse engineered how Dropbox were doing it, and we thought, what if we did something similar ourselves? So when someone ran out of energy, we did an experiment, and this thing popped up. on their screen. Invite 5 friends and you'll get more energy immediately than you've ever had before. Right? Make sense? Do you think people did it? So, can everyone see if I do this here, or do I need to? Yep. So remember earlier I drew a curve here? This was the point. We introduced that invite 5 friends, and we went from about 40,000 monthly active users to 350,000 monthly active users in 30 days, right? By bringing in that, which is essentially a viral marketing strategy, right? So how did we reverse engineer it? Well, here's the thing. When we reverse engineered what Dropbox were doing, we found that essentially there's 3 elements to consider. The first element is, what is that, what I call crack? It's an Irish word. Does anyone know the Irish crack? Like something that you want more of, right? What is that thing in your product that people want more of? The reason they're using it. Now, in Dropbox example, it was, what was it? Storage space, exactly. So if it was taken away, they want more of it. So what is your crack in your product? That's the first step. Everyone, just really quickly, draw this out. In the first step, write down what you think right now, and you can play with this more, maybe tomorrow. But just really, if you had to write down, what is the core reason why people want that product? Write it down now. I'm going to give you like 20 seconds. Why are they using your product? What's the core value? Everyone got one? Yep, cool. Okay, so 2. We want to know what the motivators are. Now, this dude, anyone know who this is? Robert Cialdini. This book on the right, Influence. If you're interested in this stuff, you should totally read it. Influence. So he has, Dr. Robert Cialdini has kind of broken down the different things that influence the human mind to take action. So as marketers, he's written it for marketers, right? And he's broken down these things. And 3 of the core ways you can influence someone to take action, particularly in an online environment, he's broken down to essentially have 3 really key ways you can ask someone to take action. So think about it like, if there was something across the room, how could you get someone to move across the room? Right, when I say take action. How could you get someone to click on something or share something with a friend? What do you think? And there's 3 main motivators I'm looking for. What would make someone click something on a website? Yeah, exactly. What kind of rewards? What kind of incentives or rewards are we talking about? More crack? Yes, I love that. So the first one is more crack is what's called, in this world, access, right? More access. So essentially, it's a bit like the queue at a nightclub. If someone came up to you and said, hey, if you get a friend, I'll let you go right to the top of the queue. Or we'll allow you into the VIP area. Right? It is motivating. People will do that. Right? It's a great example. What else? Come on. What else? I'm going to start picking on people if not. Yes. Getaway, yes. Getaway is a really good one, actually. You can apply that to all of these. Think about it. Someone said money? Who said money? Yeah. So the next one is a monetary reward. Think about it. Uber Eats, any of these kind of things, the way they dominate in any market they go into, they have a referral system which if I give you 20, I'll get 20 pounds or $20, whatever, and your friend will get $20 too. It's monetary, right? But there's one other. What do you think it is? Pain, you can apply pain to these. It can be towards or away. Yeah, love that. Well done. Ego, or what's called in this world fame, right? So something that will make you look good, your social status, it'll bring up or down, right? Think about it, like that is what Facebook is built on. People check into the airport the whole time. They don't check in when they're at Aldi or something, right? They check into things that will make them look good. So let me show you one or two examples. Here's the Dropbox example, right? Invite friends and you get that. Which one of these does that fit into? Yeah, you could put it into access. Uber. Financial reward. Go manual. Now, I know there's a few fintech businesses here. Does anyone know what this is? Do you know Monzo from the UK? It's like a challenger fintech bank. Anyone that applied to be a customer of Monzo maybe a year or two ago was met with this. Thanks for applying for a card. There are now currently 45,000 people ahead of you in the queue just to get your bank card. We are currently processing 2,000 people a month. So, by that calculation, you will get your card in approximately 9 months or something, right? However, if you'd like the card next week, all you need to do is invite 9 friends to your list, and we'll bump you up the queue when you get the card next week. Right? Access, just like the nightclub line. And just like the nightclub line, you know, that was manufactured, that was very intentional. And do you think, is it a coincidence that there's 45,000 people in that queue to get a card? Nope. Right? Really, really smart. So, of those 3 things in here, which one of them would work best for yours? I want you to write down one idea now for your business for access, money, or ego. Just do it now quickly. For the business that you're working on or one of your portfolio businesses, access, money, or ego. Which one do you think might work well for you? Cool. And then finally is when. Oh, I actually think I have an example. Yeah, thanks for asking. Here's a great one for ego. And I like this example because it's a really some people kind of, when they think of growth hacking, they go, oh, it's only for like games, or it's only for like, you know, kind of absolutely software products, and especially if we've got a hardware product here. Has anyone heard of Ring, the doorbells? Yeah, a few people have. It's like a really smart way. If someone rings your doorbell, you can be on the other side of the planet. It'll pop up in your mobile, and you can talk to them. This is a great example of ego, where they were able to get people to share if there was someone at the door that they thought looked dodgy or risky, right? Make sense? Because it was like a service to the local community, and everybody's sharing these Ring things. And it's essentially people doing Ring's marketing for them. Make sense? Again, does it make sense? No? Okay, so I see someone come to my door on Ring, right? Their picture comes up. There's a button that allows me to really easily share it to my social community, saying, hey guys, there's this person in the local area, do you know them? And that, of course, is them sharing the Ring product to all their friends. And that's a hardware product. You know, just like that example, because everyone can use this stuff. Right? Really, really smart. And this is really current, right? So once you've got this stuff, the step is, do you remember that loop I had a second ago? About, you've now created your backlog. The next step is, you want to go through that loop with your ideas. This is a way that you can come up with some viral ideas. Try and get through that loop as fast as you can. This is a process called high tempo testing. Testing an idea at high tempo, right? So this is Art Briles from the Byron Bears. And he's a really revolutionary coach in American football. He started this new way of training and running teams on the pitch. So essentially, the way American football works is you've got these like pauses between games where the teams get to huddle. Have you ever seen the American footballers huddle? What Art Bra has brought in this new approach of training called high-tempo offense, where when they're switching plays, the other team would go into huddle, but when it was his turn, he'd get his team to run straight back in to their next play. And it kind of took the opposition team by surprise, and the opposition team was out of breath, right? And they couldn't keep up with them. And his teams had a really rapid improvement, and they ended up winning a lot of tournaments. Now, what this meant was his teams got to play 20% more plays than teams that were taking the pauses, which were 13 plays a game, which over the season meant there was essentially 2 more full games of them playing offense compared to their competitors. The reason this is important is because they essentially had 2 more full games than their opposition playing with each other and learning. And the key to this high tempo thing is really he or she who learns fastest wins. That's the key to this stuff, because half of these growth hacking ideas or viral market ideas, they're not going to work, right? They're not, all of them are, you have to go into it assuming 80% of your ideas will not work. But it's the 20% of them that will, that you need to get to, right? So you see this chart here? Most people get excited by this when I talk to them about it. But really the thing that excites me the most is this bit. Because people don't see the fact that we were running experiments, growth experiments, every week since the business launched, but most of them did not work. But 3 or 4 months in, we hit the jackpot, and this happened. Now, if we had stopped on, say, experiment number 36, and it was actually experiment number 37 that worked, we would not have gotten the result. And what most people do is they try 1 or 2 things, they get disillusioned, oh, it didn't work, I didn't get the hockey stick, and I'm going to stop. So the whole thing about this growth hacking process, the process is to get a load of ideas and then systematically test them at high tempo, maybe once every week or 2. Come up with one idea that you're trying. Does that make sense? Cool. So I will share as well. I have an experiment sheet I'll share with all you guys. If you want to go to howardkingston.com/hacks, I've got a couple of resources like my experiment testing sheet. If you want to log all the experiments that you want to run. Right, maybe just take a photo or write that down, howardkingston.com/hacks. And the final step is, I'll put that back up in a sec, right? The final step, if you remember, do you remember the first step was backlog? Yeah. Create a backlog of ideas. What was the second step? Hypothesis, yeah. So that was actually kind of coming up with a first way to run a test. Then you have, what was the next one? Run the test. And the final one was review it with data. And this is the bit, in my experience, that people miss the most, right? So I'd love to just share an example of how you can miss stuff so easily with the one final story. And that's of a company called Bourbon. Has anyone heard of Bourbon? If you haven't, don't shout out loud. So Bourbon were based in New York. They were a location-based app that you could check in with your friends, and your friends would see where you are and could come and hang out with them. Now, loads of people have had that idea before, including Foursquare, who were like quite a few years ahead of them and had about 20 million users at this point. So Bourbon had raised $500,000 of investor money and were trying a few things out, and it wasn't working. And they had about 1,000 or 2,000 customers. Their idea was essentially they had loads of features, like you could check in, send a virtual item to someone, send some virtual flowers to someone, put some funky filters on images, things like that. It wasn't working, and they had 1,000 or 2,000 customers, and they had about 2 or 3 months runway left before they ran out of money. Now, their investor was flying to town the following week, and they had to pitch, the 3 startup founders had to pitch their kind of like final strategy, essentially. They had 3 months of money left before they went out of business. And they spent the weekend, like any good founders was, it was a real like, let's work all weekend. One founder went out and started speaking to customers. One started trying to get a few more users using Facebook ads or whatever. And the other one said, listen, we've got a couple of thousand users here. Let me mine the data. Let me see if there's any learnings. And they reconvened on Sunday evening. And when they were kind of presenting what happened, the founder that had mined the data said, listen, guys, I actually found something interesting. We don't have a lot of customers, fair, but I did find the users that do use us all seem to use this one feature. And that's the ability to take a photo and put a filter on it, right? They were like, oh, okay. So they kind of looked at it a bit more, and by Monday morning, before the investor came in, they decided they were changing their strategy. They were doing something called a pivot, right? You all know this pivot thing from Lean Startup World. So they're pivoting the strategy of the business completely. They decided to just focus on that one feature that everyone used. Take a photo, put a funky filter on it. And they actually decided to remove every other feature, including the ability to even check in, which was their original point of the business. And they also decided to change the name of the business to Instagram. Yeah. And the thing I love about that story is that this billion-dollar idea did not come from someone standing in the shower and getting, this inspiration. It didn't. It came from them having a bad idea, but being kind of dedicated enough to look if there's anything interested in the data. And if you don't do that loop, final bit of the loop, you can miss the learnings and miss out on the big things that could be that, hockey stick growth or billion-dollar element to your idea, right? Does that make sense? So what have we talked about? We've just talked about the growth hacking process and how it can work for you. Hopefully you have something in front of you, which is a bit of a viral strategy. I do ask you to spend a bit more time on it because it's a way you can come with a lot of ideas. Now, information is good, and some inspiration like me just up here on stage is good. You know what's better than information? Action, yeah. So I'm going to ask you a final thing before I finish. One, what is the one key insight you've got from my talk? I've just spent 30 minutes with you just talking about something new. Hopefully it's kind of has opened your mind a bit to what's possible. What's one key takeaway? I want you to just write it down because tomorrow when you wake up, that's what you'll remember. I want you to write down 1, what is one key insight? And 2, what is one piece of action you're going to take as a result of what I've just talked about? Even if it's a tiny step like buying that influence book, I don't care. I just want you to learn something and take action with something, even if it's something tiny. Quick share. Hands up. What's one insight you've learned from today? Yeah. Test quickly. Love that. What else? Yeah? What else? One key insight. What? Crunch data. Totally, love that. Yeah, if it's okay, I'll just finish this, and then if it's okay with the guys to take questions, I will. Okay?
Small tricks, big impacts.
What?
Small tricks, big impacts.
Small tricks?
Big impact.
Yeah, totally, love that. And pivoting is important when it's backed by data, isn't it? What is one piece of action you're going to take? Yeah, love that. Yeah, cool. One more piece of action?
Data is the key.
What? Data is the key. So go and see if there's any kind of like interesting insights in there. Cool, guys. I know it's my time. Thank you very much, guys. It's been great to be here, and I look forward to hearing your presentations. Cool. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. So we're a little behind on time, so really quick break. Everyone, 2 minutes. We're coming right back. Bathroom breaks as you need. coffee, water, and we're getting settled. We're diving right into the startup pitches. In this meantime, those of you who have your computer, in your participant page, whether it's the Startup for Your Investors, in session 2, you have workshop tools, and there's a form for everyone to take some feedback, take some notes in the forms on the startup pitches. If you're an investor for the startups, for the other startups. Okay, quick break. We're gonna start in 5 minutes or less, okay?